Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur here, and today, first and foremost, I apologize if you hear any smooth jazz coming over here from the side. I am on hold with customer service for a problem with my phone, and the estimated wait time is 37 minutes, so I decided I'm gonna make a video. Because I love you guys and I am bored. So today we're going to talk about is we're wrapping up on a bunch of the anti-tank teams that we've been studying, and so today we're going to talk about the Japanese lunge mines, which is my YouTube-friendly version of the entry in the armies of Japan. And we're going to see how they perform. Now, we've been looking at a lot of different stuff, and I made sure to do the Panzerfaust video and the Soviet dog mine video first because they have some similarities to this one, and yet they're also radically different from this one, as you are about to see. But suffice it to say, this is a very unique, highly niche, mostly-ish effective, and very interesting option. So we're going to take a look at it. We'll be looking at the stuff that we normally do. As we go through this, I won't insult your intelligence for those of you who have been with the study, but just suffice it to say, a very multifaceted look at this and whether or not it's a good option for you to take. Short answer, as you can imagine, they are pretty good. So first of all, looking at how they compare for a range and rate of fire perspective between the two editions. In second edition, it was close combat range only, so you had to successfully assault a vehicle, which means, of course, vehicles that have performed a run, for example, you just flat out cannot assault. And so that's, a thing that you need to take into consideration. You get one attack dice, which kind of makes sense because there's only one mine on it. And of course, the unique thing about this one is that the model itself is also removed as a casualty. And since this is a one-man only unit, it means by choosing to use the weapon, you will lose an order dice, right? And that is something to consider. In third edition, none of this has changed. Everything about it is exactly the same. And so this means that you get firepower on par with a super heavy anti-tank gun on a Panzer Ace tank, which is a lot, for 14 to 26 points, or around 2,000% less, sometimes an even higher percentage, depending on which super heavy AT gun Panzer Ace you're looking at. Now, obviously, those Panzer Aces are paying for things like durability. They're getting, potentially, if they're doing a run order, they're getting better movement, assuming that it's not one of those really slow, like Ferdinand-style things. But, from a firepower perspective, technically, they're the same, which is interesting, right? And so if you're just looking for firepower, this is a hefty discount. They also don't have the fixed rule, which is good because you need these things to be booking it and moving around. The squad must run in order to hit. So effectively, this is only a 6 to 12 inch range of fire, right? That you get 6 inches if you're coming out of or have to move into a spot of rough terrain, 12 inches if you're crossing over open ground. There is also no cover save against this. This was confirmed in the errata that was mentioned over there, where reinforced frontal armor rule doesn't work against this stuff because it's not a ranged attack, which is accurate. This is not a ranged attack, and cover saves don't apply to assaults, and this is in fact an assault. So we have pretty good understandings. There's no cover. There's no ability to get past this thing. If the guy runs up to you and touches you with the pointy bits of the mine, it's going to blow up, and no amount of fencing or ruin wall or something like that is going to save you. Now, this changes a lot of stuff because what this means is, first of all, for the effective delivery system, this is exceedingly cheap at 14 to 26 points. The fact that this thing ignores all cover saves, the fact that it's a pen plus 8, which means that it is very effective, and that 100% of the time that you're rolling for this thing, it has hit the target. That makes a big deal, right? In terms of the cost ratio, the only anti-tank infantry option that comes anywhere close to this is the AT rifle team. The AT rifle team can be anywhere from 18 to 33 points, which is the next lowest on the scale. And even then, chances to hit is around 50%, maybe worse. So, like, just from even just a hitting perspective, there's no doubt about it, this is by far the cheapest, most efficient way to get hits on an enemy vehicle, assuming you can get them into range. There are hidden costs. You might have transports for these. The one issue, of course, with transports is you can't charge on the same turn that you get out because you didn't have line of sight. So do they work with transports? Maybe not. I'll let Tiki and a bunch of other sound off down below to see whether that's the best idea. I'm not sure it is. The biggest benefit, of course, is that you can move them up relatively safely if it's like an armored transport. So That could be useful. That being said, if the transport does get blown up, it's only one man taking the hits against his unit, which is not good odds. So, all depends. You very likely will be taking armor to use as mobile cover. So, if you move up an armored vehicle, even just a damage value 7 plus, which is a lot of Japanese armor, you can run this guy to the side of that or behind it and get some pretty reasonable cover against whatever an enemy may throw at you, which is really nice. I'm also curious to see if maybe there'll be subtypes in the future that apply to these. Obviously, we've been seeing that a lot for anti-tank teams coming up here in 3rd edition. So it'll just be interesting to see what there is. If there's a field craft option, which, considering how much jungle warfare Japan was doing, I'd be very surprised if there isn't a fieldcraft option of some kind. I'm assuming Taishin Shidai is going to appear because everybody loves Stubborn, apparently, as a potential subtype to throw on everybody. But, maybe SNLF or something like that would get some, like, fieldcraft. That could be very interesting as a potential option, because then you'd have a 12-inch run rate no matter what, which is pretty awesome. But other than that, I mean, I guess we'll see if there are any additional costs that are tied to it, and it'll be relatively cheap no matter what, because you're only buying it for one dude, right? So there's that. It also, and this is, I think, the biggest reason for running these, it's a super cheap unit that can threaten armor psychologically, right? What you're actually using this for is a psychological warfare, the board control, similar to what we talked about with the Panzerfaust and the dog mines. But even more so because a pen +5 or a pen +6 hit, and in the case of the dog mines, a chance that it hits one of your own units instead. Like, this is a pen +8, right? Like, most of the stuff you're going to be shooting at, it's not going to be 2s, maybe 3s to glance or wound, depending on the kind of armor that you're looking at. This is going to be 2s to wound the vast majority of armor that you're going to see, right? I mean, it's 2s to glance heavy tanks, which is crazy when you think about it, right? I mean, that is wild that that's what it would take, right? And that is, it's 3s to glance a super heavy tank, which is wild, okay, as we'll soon see below. But just suffice it to say, it means everybody has to play very differently, especially since these guys have Infiltrator, which means they're not starting way back with the rest of of your own force. They can start pretty far up, which is really great, okay? And then admittedly, the number one issue with this is that these units, especially in a kill point scenario, they do come with that liability, because they're rushing at a unit. Maybe they destroy it, maybe they don't, but they guarantee that you lose one in return, right? And so you would be coughing up points, and you really better destroy what you run into, and some of that's going to be die rolls. So you just got to be a little bit careful, okay? So in terms of pin generation, how does it do? Well, it all depends. In 2nd edition, you could get none, because maybe you just don't ever make it in. Or you could set something on fire and give it like 4. And then they'd make a morale test, and you'd probably do pretty well against that morale test. And so you're going to swing somewhere between those two. And your chance of putting things on fire is actually pretty reasonable, because of that 100% chance to hit. In most cases, of course, it's going to be a lot less than that. In general, though, it's going to be somewhere between 5 to 20 points per pin, which is not particularly great. And the same math kind of holds over, because the cost hasn't changed, the mechanics haven't changed, the pin chances haven't changed. Okay, so in general, you do only get one chance, but honestly, your chances of getting at least 2 pins, if not outright destroying the vehicle, is actually pretty good, right? Because at the very least, you're going to get a damage result, probably a full damage result on the damage chart. And you're probably at least going to make the crew go down or immobilize it, right? Like, just from that, your chances of getting 2 is actually pretty good, which at 10 points per pin is actually pretty reasonable, right? It's not the greatest so far. It's not auto cannons, but it is still pretty good. So in terms of damage, what are you looking at? Let's just start with the fact that you have a 50-50 chance of doing full damage, like getting to roll on the full chart against any vehicle in the game or better. That's crazy. That is crazy, right? And it goes up. It only goes up from there, which is really, really nice, okay? You'll get a destroyed result, and this is something we've never calculated so far in this series. To say, what is the chance, just by picking up the dice, because you're in range and you're getting ready to roll a wound, that you just flat out destroy a vehicle? There is a 25% chance, a 1 in 4 chance, that just by picking up that dice and say, I'm rolling damage, that a super heavy tank, upwards of 300 points, is going to be removed from the game by this 14 to 26 point unit. And that is bonkers. Okay. That is bonkers. And as you can see, the math only gets better. Most of it capping out at 83.33% chance, which, by the way, is a 100% chance to hit and 2s to wound. Okay, just to give you an idea for what that is the best you're going to get in bolt action because there is no such thing as an automatic wound in bolt action. So, first time in our entire series, as we're doing the math deep dives, we have come across a maximum score, and it comes from the Japanese Lunge Mine. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons for this. Obviously, the biggest thing is the fact that, of course, it's automatic hits, right? So it's starting in a full 100 instead of starting around a 50, like most of them tend to start at. We'll typically do like 3 pluses or 5 pluses. Very rarely are we looking at things like even 2 pluses, but this one in this case is literally it hits the target. Okay, so toward that end, as you can see, the math is really good for those DV9, 8, 7, 6, and those damage value 3+ vehicles. Toes, things like that. Obviously, I wouldn't personally recommend that unless you're really trying to get rid of stuff for whatever reason, and you're willing to throw away an order dice in order to do it. I still wouldn't do that, but hypothetically, you're really good at it. So suffice it to say, damage output, really, really nice. And I show over here on the right-hand side that you do get extra selection. The nice thing about how extra selection works, it is only 1 selection in each platoon. So if you have a heavy weapons platoon, you can't take 9 of these guys, but you can take 5 of them if you really wanted to, okay? And you take 3 of them in a rifle platoon. So the ability to put out large numbers of these guys, even at only like 500 or 600 points, is really quite extensive. And to be able to do that at 1,000 points, for example, if you were really afraid about a whole lot of armor running around and you wanted to have a bunch of guys going out to do the dirty work, you could do that. And you could be quite effective at it. So in terms of objective holding, how does it look? Honestly, it's not great. You have 1 guy, so he's very easily removed. You do get cover bonuses. He has Infiltrator, which might help him with cover, which is always nice. I would personally take them veteran. I don't see a whole lot of cost difference between them otherwise. I've heard the arguments for inexperienced or regular. I feel like easier chance to hit and wound in this game with 3rd edition makes it so that veteran seems a lot more appealing because it's not that many more points, but it does help to cut out a whole bunch of the wounds. So even then, the best that they can do, it's not particularly great. They're also not very good at removing people in advance because even though that guy in the picture has a rifle, the actual guy, as far as I can recall, has a lunge mine, artillery shell, satchel charge, magnetic mine, or similar. There's no rifle included. Okay, that's the official model that's on the box for the Japanese infantry sprue, but cannot take a rifle. So that means you cannot remove anybody on approach. You can technically remove an armored vehicle coming in on approach, as long as they're within 12 inches and you have a clear line to be able to run at them. You can do that, but of course that also removes you, so you'll need extra men to guard objectives. So if you are going to use these guys to camp objectives, just make sure it's one of those objectives that your opponent's never going to reach and is never going to contest, because these guys are not going to do very good at all. You cannot react to an assault because you cannot shoot at anything because you have no shooting, right? Which means you got to take it for what it's worth, and that's not great. So it's fragile. It's a high priority target. Your opponent's going to try to get rid of it because if nothing else, it is an easy order dice to remove, and because it can really blow stuff up, which is not very fun. It has no real threat to enemy infantry unless they're really, really messed up, or maybe it's like a 2-man inexperienced light mortar team or AT rifle team or dog mine team or something like that, and you are charging them and you're fighting at the same time and you think they don't get a 5 before you get a 3. Like things like that. Like it's just, it's not great. And machine guns specifically, which are a lot more prevalent this edition because of the changes to snipers. Machine guns love shooting at these things, and they are quite effective at it. So in general, like if you're trying to hold an objective, only use these guys to hold an objective if you know it is going to be absolutely safe. Now for objective taking, on the other hand, you have a man who has no gun, which makes his order assignments really easy. It's run every turn pretty much, unless you really need to go down or something like that. And then you got a boomstick. Okay, so your job is very, very simple. Okay, you're going to attempt to clear an armored vehicle off the objective. That's what you're there for. And admittedly, you're really good at it. Okay, you can possibly, as we were talking about earlier, you might be able to assault a light mortar team or an AT rifle team, especially if they're inexperienced, which tends to be more common for light mortars than it is for AT rifles. But if you're able to assault one of those, you might be able to clear it. But in general, this guy's going to be a softening unit He is not going to be a capturing unit, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is while you do have really good armor penetration, as the stats before showed, you do sometimes roll ones for the wounding roll, and I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. Okay. It is hilarious in the moment. It is frustrating. It is not great. So just remember, it does technically happen. So don't like bring these guys, and when they start failing for you, don't blame Zern Central for telling you that they work really well all the time. They work really well 83% of the time, because sometimes you do roll ones, okay? But that's why you shouldn't just run one of these guys. You should be bringing several of them, so that way if one of them botches, another one will probably work, okay? So what should you be prioritizing? You want to go after those damage value 7 to 9 vehicles. You're still getting about 10 times your cost back in terms of value, sometimes more, sometimes less. That is a really good trade and investment, especially when it's one order dice for one order dice, but you're removing way more in terms of value, which might help the rest of your army to fight back. Okay. Soft skin transports and tows can be fine. Tows a lot less. It's really only useful if you're like, well, I got to clear something off the board. I just want to get rid of it so he doesn't have the order dice that helps me out with other things, right? Or whatever. Because you're losing the order dice in return again, I just don't see it. Like, if it's one of those upgunned, heavy machine gun style tows that some of the other armies can get, you could be making your points back. But in general, tows are not going to be well worth it. Transports can be really nice because if nothing else, there might be men in them, so you might get some decent infantry removal by virtue of the hits of them coming out of a destroyed vehicle. But that's really what you're doing, okay? Um, but yeah, that's kind of the big trick and the big issue with that. Small infantry teams, like you have a reasonable chance of success if you can winnow them down with other stuff. But again, like you run the risk they roll a 6, right? Or something in order to wound you, and either you don't roll something or you do roll a wound, but there's more than one of them, so you lose the combat anyway. You haven't removed their dice, and you lose one of yours. I don't necessarily see it, but in a few unique niche situations, it could be useful. And then finally, you can go after heavily armored vehicles. Obviously, your damage rolls are decent against them. You have to get in close, and then after you get in close, you have to roll that wounding roll. There's a much higher chance with those that you're not just going to be doing straight wounds. You might get a glance. So it's just things to worry about and things to think about as you're looking at the stuff. Okay. So this is the part of the show where I talk about changes I would make to these. And honestly, I wouldn't. I think they're great. I think they're super niche. They come with built-in trade-offs, which is what makes it fair. And they come with built-in high-risk rewards because you can blow up with a reasonable chance, about as good a chance as you're going to get in bolt action, uh, almost anything in the game, which is really great. And for Japan, which doesn't have a lot of really big weapons, like they're really, really short in the anti-tank gun department, it is nice that you have something that has a lot of really good penetration and it plays the way you want to, and it comes on an infantry sprue. Right? Like you can buy 30 men, you can make some you can make a whole rifle platoon plus a bunch of these guys to throw into this squad and a heavy weapons platoon for the same cost as most people are buying a super heavy anti-tank gun armored piece, right? Like, and so that's really, really nice from just a cost perspective. Love how these things work, okay? And so, on the whole, I think this is really, really good design. Obviously, it's regrettable that a man has to go in order to make this thing happen. War's war, war sucks. But it is very flavorful. It is different. It is interesting, and it gives you a value add as to why you would run one nation over another. If you like this kind of reward, if you're willing to live with it, if you think that that would work out fine, then you can do it. And you will be unique. Nobody else will have anything quite like it, and I do love it when that appears. But what do you think? Do you think that they're too fragile now that hit modifiers have disappeared and not being a small team and not being able to take advantage of heavy cover isn't making people hit on 6s or worse? Do you think that they are overpowered as they currently are and they should be toned down from their current stats? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.